But one quote that I've sort of clung to is this quote which I read when I was here last time, which is a quote from Meher Baba, one of the 5 or 6 that I still keep using, because it seems like an ideal introduction into what Bhakti-Yoga is about, or the yoga of love or devotion, which is often said to be the appropriate yoga for the Kali Yuga, or the period of darkness. It's the method of the heart. Meher Baba says, love has to spring spontaneously from within. It is in no way amenable to any form of inner or outer force. Love and coercion can never go together. But though love cannot be forced on anyone, it can be awakened in him through love itself. Love is essentially self-communicative. Those who do not have it catch it from those who have it. True love is unconquerable and irresistible. And it goes on gathering power and spreading itself until eventually it transforms everyone whom it touches. Now, to see where love fits into the scheme of things in relation to consciousness, which we've been talking about most of the day, you have got to have wrestled with and come to a deep understanding of the statement that love and consciousness are an identity. That is, they are exactly the same thing. And if you want to take it one step further out, love, consciousness, and energy are an identity. In fact, at that top of that pyramid, where all of the stuff comes together into the oneness, love, if you follow it far enough back, energy, consciousness, truth, beauty, it's all the same thing. They're just different perspectives, different emphasis of the initial statement, which is unstatable. Now, when you open the 4th chakra, you experience more energy, and that is done, and the experience is one of greater and greater love for all things, a compassionate love. Now, it is useful to get free of thinking of love as a finite commodity, or as out of the romantic models of interpersonal love. It may be that we'd be better off to get rid of all the words that we've overused, like love and consciousness and energy. But since we are working with them, because they do show emphasis, start to understand the difference between what would be called Christ love, or that profound love of the beingness, and the doing love of I love you. Now, if you understand that love is a state of existence, it's a state, it's a vibrational place, it's a psychic space. And when you say we are in love, means that you and I do that thing to each other which allows us to come into that psychic space. In other words, you really say, my beloved turns me on, which means touches a place in me where I am. Love. That's really a better way of saying it. Okay? You allow me to be love is what you're really saying to somebody that you say, I love you. When I say I love you, it means that you allow me to be love, okay? Which is a more exact way of saying it. You turn me on to that place in me where I am love. And if you start to see that as you transcend, you notice that when you are in love, you are as much concerned with the well-being of your beloved as yourself. And if they haven't eaten, you don't feel like eating. And you're really, there's that place where you share karma, if you will. You merge with that other person, and their problem is your problem. You don't decide whether it'll be your problem. It is your problem because you've merged in that way. Well, in that sense, you have both entered into a shared psychic space, which is what happens the minute you can transcend the boundaries of your own individual separate identity. Now, it's useful to think of this, I think, as frequencies of vibrations. I think it works quite well that way. That if I am in love, that feeling when you're in love with life or another person or nature or spring or whatever that thing is, where you're dancing inside and bubbling over and the whole thing is new and fresh and beautiful, that place, that you can think of as a frequency of vibration in which you are perceiving. It's like a field, a way in which you are seeing the universe, and it's all vibrational. It's just like color spectrum. At different vibrations you see different colors. Well, in different vibrations you see different realities in the same way, in a more profound level. So then the question, as Maya Baba says, is, since that higher vibration, the game is to get identified with higher and higher vibrational rates. In other words, do your take of yourself through these higher rates, until finally you get to the point where you are light, and you merge with light, which is the highest vibrational rate, where stuff stays separate from one another. Anything beyond Planck's constant, it's a different matter entirely. It's the other side of the coin. So now, when you want to change your own vibrational rate, one of the games to do it with is to calm the mind down till you get free of all of the thought patterns that keep you stuck at this vibrational frequency, this channel. Another way of doing it, which is the Bhakti-Yoga way, which is within dualism, is to pick some entity to which is exuding love by its nature, or light, or love, light, life, etc. And then just keep opening yourself to it by this process. In other words, you pull yourself into its vibrational field by surrendering to its vibrational rate. And the reason you can do it is because it's perfectly safe. It's perfectly safe. Now, see, Maya Baba, for example, says, all you've got to do, he says, if you want to go the whole trip, all you've got to do is love me. Sounds like a far-out egomaniac. Just love me enough, and you'll become enlightened. But what he's saying is, through your ability to love me, you will tune in on the place in you which is love, and that place is the same place as full consciousness. That's what enlightenment is, where you become one with love. You are love, you are light, you are energy, you are consciousness. It's the place where every movement you make is a totally creative act, because you can't do anything but that, because you're always performing the optimum act in any situation. Now, this method of Bhakti-Yoga can be done in about 10 different ways, depending on which way you get turned on. See? Like there are Bhakti-Yogic forms for loving the light in the form of a woman. There's some for loving it in the form of a man. There's some for loving it in the form of a child. There's some for loving it in the form of a teacher or a master. Each person finds that form through which they can express love openly. Now, in our Western religious traditions, we only really think of God or that thing within a certain very limited set of possibilities. And God is often characterized as either being righteous or wrathful or forgiving. He's a little bit like somebody's stern grandfather oftentimes. Sometimes in the Psalms and the songs you see the other side, but generally you can't imagine him in wild sexual sport by the banks of the Jumna somehow like you can with Krishna. See? Because Krishna is spending every autumn on the full moon, Krishna plays his flute. He's the eternally youthful, beautiful young boy. He plays his flute, and all the chicks in the countryside drop whatever they're doing. They leave their babies, their husbands, their milk buckets, everything. When Krishna plays the flute, they come, and they come to see him, and it's a full moon by the riverbank, and 16,000 of these gopis, or goat girls, these milkmaids, come and stand around just loving him, and then in order to fulfill their greatest desire, he makes himself manifest in 16,000 forms, and he makes love to each of them just the way they want to be made love to. All right? And in that wild moment, they become one with Krishna, and they become the divine. They become divine at that moment. Now, that story, which is a traditional story in India, is a very hard one for us in the West to think about in religious terms. See? And many Indians sit around, pundits say around, is this pornographic, or is it, because once the spirit's lost, man, you know what everybody does with their heads. But it turns out that there is a sect in India called the Shakts who become the gopis in order to love Krishna that way. And they're men, and they're not transvestites in the second chakra sense, but they dress like gopis, and they go around, and their whole sect is designed to worship Krishna. And they worship Krishna in the relation of lover and beloved. And through that relationship, which is the highest form of Bhakti-Yoga, it turns out, see, that lover to the beloved, you then go through the door of dualism into non-dualism. Now, the sect that I'm in is a servant sect. See? And the model of their service is Hanuman, the monkey. See? Because in the Ramayana, in the story of Ram is this beautiful young prince, and he's a perfect karma yogi. That's who he is. He's a perfect father, husband, warrior, prince, everything. He gets sent off into the jungle, and he's a perfect jungle person. He does everything perfectly. He's always perfectly conscious. He's just a good guy, right? His name is Ram. Okay, now, just like most of these holy books, he doesn't mind, sorry. Just like most of these holy books, there are always at two levels. That is, see, like in the New Testament, there is, of course, the Jesus story and the Christ story. See, there is Jesus saying, like doing his thing every day, and then there is Christ who's giving the asides to the audience. See, like in a Shakespeare play, saying, tomorrow's the big day, or, now it's all done, or, now the story's lived out, or that's according to the prophecy. You see, there's that meta guy, meta-think, who sees it all. See, and in most of the holy books, there are always those two levels. You see, you always have, it's that you take it at whatever level you can take it at, so that there is always a nice story like the Ramayana. See, but you get a clue to how the two levels, like in the Ramayana, Ravan is the bad guy, but he's actually a good guy taking a bad incarnation in order to finish off some rough karma, okay? And his greatest hope is he'll be killed by Ram, who is his enemy, see, because that will free him and finish him with his trip. So he's bad guy on one level and he's a good guy on another level. At one point, Ram is walking through the woods, and the gopis, not the gopis, the nagas, the naked ascetics, are being bugged by demons. It's a great story, I like it. They're being bugged by demons, and And Ram, they come to Ram and they say, "Hey Ram, would you get rid of these demons, man? They're a real drag and we can't meditate and get on with our sadhana. See, it's like, would you clear up the scene of the town so it's cool, so we don't, because the police are coming, it's a real drag." So Ram says, "Well, I'll have to go see my guru to get a mantra to do it, So he walks through, swamp and bush to finally get to his guru, and his guru takes one look and sees Ram coming, who's God, of course, right, at one level. And the guru goes rushing out of the house and falls on his face before Ram, and Ram sees his guru, and there's his guru, and Ram is still the young guy, and there's his guru, and he goes and falls on his face, and they're falling on their face in front of each other. And Ram says to the guru, "I need a mantra to get rid of the demons that are bugging the Nagas." I'm translating it slightly. And the guru says, "Sure, man, I'll give it to you." And then he says, "Hey, wait a minute, baby. Like, you're God. What kind of a thing? What are you asking me for the mantra for? You're not only the mantra, but you're the demons. You're the whole business, man. If you don't like it, just change. It's your thing." And then right in the middle of putting Ram down for coming on to him, he says, "Oh, I forgot. We're in an incarnation, and in this incarnation, you're this young cat, and I'm your guru, so of course I'll give you a mantra here. Here's your mantra. Go do your thing." Now, that's why it's very high reading these books, because, see, you're getting these levels, and you begin to see your own drama lived out at all these levels as well. And you begin to see that everybody you're meeting is Ram in some form or other. That's come, or is that same being in some form or other. And so in India, when you meet people, you always say namaste, which when it was known in the spirit and used in the spirit, it meant, I honor that place in you which is behind all your dramas. I honor the Atman. I honor the light, the God within you. Right? Okay, now, Hanuman, to get to Hanuman, at one point, Sita, who's Ram's wife, is taken away by Ravana, who wants to make it with her because she's a beautiful chick, see? And he takes her to his island, and she won't make it with him. She says, "I'll die first. I only want Ram." And of course, Ram is distraught because his chick's gone, but at the same level, he's God, and how distraught can he get? Because, right, all right, so there's two levels. But in the level at which he's distraught, he goes rushing around looking for Sita, and he goes to the king of the monkeys, and he says, "Hey, you fellas are around everywhere, in the trees looking, would you help me find Sita?" And the king, who Ram does a few favors for, and the king, so on, the king says, "I'll assign my monkey lieutenant to your service," and the monkey lieutenant is Hanuman. And Hanuman dedicates his life to serving Ram. And Hanuman in the pictures is always shown kneeling on one knee, touching Ram's feet. That's the relationship of Hanuman to Ram. And Hanuman is, now dig this way it works, you see, that Hanuman is just a regular old monkey. However, to the extent that his service to Ram is pure, he has all the powers of God. Right? That's the way the thing works. In other words, he surrenders himself to pure light and pure energy, becoming therefore a conduit, and since he surrendered himself, it is a conduit of increasing expanded diameter through which all the energy can pass. To understand that more clearly, take my guru, who is in this Hanuman sect. He spends his whole life, just the way Hanuman does, open to Ram. He is in love with Ram. He is loving upward. In the Hindu system, there's only one male in the universe, by the way, and it's God. And everything else in relation to it, in this particular model, is female open. See, and he surrenders to that, so he becomes upward. He is female. That is in the yin-yang sense of it. He is the passive, receptive, open. Because of the purity of his surrender, all of the energy of Ram passes through him, so that anybody that meets the Guru experiences the fact that they are meeting the most powerful male being they've ever met. Not in the Western male, masculine thing, but the maleness of the force field, that force. So when you meet this pure force, the first thing you want to do is surrender to it. And you open yourself and surrender to it, and to the extent that your surrender is pure, all the energy goes through you, and then you in turn are this strong, etc., which in turn leads the next person to open to you, which allows the energy to go through, and that's the way the baraka, or the spirit, is passed. It's passed through the act of surrender, which can be from the lover to the beloved, or the servant to the master. And Hanuman's role is the servant to the master, so that, like I sit in India in a temple, and there is in front of me an 8-foot-high statue of a monkey, right? And I sit there meditating in front of this monkey, and I think about the folks back home. Good Jewish boy from Boston sitting in front of this monkey up in the mountains, worshipping a monkey. It's a hard one to explain. That you're not worshipping idols. And Hanuman says, Ram says to Hanuman, Hanuman, who are you? And Hanuman says, when I don't know who I am, I serve you. When I know who I am, you and I are one. Right? Got that? In other words, when I've awakened to who I really am, there is no difference between us. But it's the minute I come down into dualism, the only role I come down into in dualism is to serve you. That's the only thing I do in the world of dualism. And therefore, every act I perform is an act of service to you. Right? And that's the way you can open your conduit to the widest possible diameter for the maximum amount of psychic energy which allows you to be optimally effective in the universe at any moment, is to surrender yourself to, which is in the Christian Bible, not my but thy will, O Lord, which is that same exact statement. So it can be like John to Jesus, friend to friend, or it can be brothers, it can be all these different relationships. Each person finds their own relationship to relate to. Now, the thing is, you can take your beloved, another person, and do the same thing by going deeper and deeper, but it's a very, very, very risky upaya. It is the highest risk upaya, as I can see, is using your sexual partner or a lover on the physical plane who isn't a realized being as your method of going into higher consciousness, because when you're dealing with areas that are high drive areas, the habits, the mechanical habits are you learned under very high drive, and they're very difficult to change. And it's very difficult not to get caught in loving the wrong level in the other person, of not loving the individual difference level, instead of that which is behind it, the light, the pure light in the other person. And so sometimes it is useful to go back and forth. There is a mantra, which is a mantra I will write out for those of you that want, and I'm entitled to you. The one is Aditya Hridayam Punyam Sarv Shatru Vinashanam, which comes from the Ramayana, which says, all evil vanishes from life for him who keeps the sun in his heart. And I can sit there and just walk down the street, Aditya Hridayam Punyam Sarv Shatru Vinashanam. And all I do is I become like the sun. What does the sun do? It emits light, it emits warmth, it emits life force. It asks nothing in return. It doesn't say, I'll love you, I'll shine on you because you are good, and I won't shine on you because you're bad. It just shines. It does its thing. It doesn't ask anything in return. And the result is that everybody that comes into its orb, its scope, its area, is warmed and given life and given everything, given energy. And that's what you become. You become an unconditional lover. As C.S. Lewis says, I don't think I can find the quote exactly, he says, love me because I am totally superfluous. Neither love me because of my need or your desire, but just because. Just love me because you love me, because you love me, because you love me, because you are love, because that's what you do, you love. Now, when we sing kirtan, which is the repeated names of God, it isn't just to sing repeated names of God, it's to open that possibility of love. It's to, you can do it to anyone that you can work with. See? And all you're doing is filling your consciousness with that in the other person, which is the pure light. See? I have all these pictures. I can take the picture of Ramakrishna and sit down with it, and pretty soon, or Ramana Maharshi, or my guru, and pretty soon tears are streaming down my face, and I'm quivering just with delight over the love that I feel in that other being. Just because you keep opening and opening and opening and opening and opening to the higher and higher places. So, nobody says I am unloved or I am unloving. That's all a hype. That isn't it. That you just become a certain way, and then, believe me, you are surrounded with love. You're drowned in love. The more I can become centered in love, the more everywhere I look, I see loving eyes looking at me. I see people that love me and are open to me. And it's extraordinary. I sometimes, when I've spoken in an evening and there's like 1,000 people, it scares me because I'm being drowned in love. And then I say, who's scared and who's being drowned? It's that trivial ego that wants to collect it all for itself. Do you love me? Do you love me? That's the ego. And that one's getting too much. It's like, you want water? Well, here's Niagara Falls, that kind of thing. Until finally you have to give up he who can drink. See? You got to give it up, because it's the horror of having all your desires happen. See? It's like, you want it? Okay, baby, here. And I look at the picture of Maharaji, I say, come on, baby, cut it out. Not so heavy. Couldn't you give it to me in little doses I can enjoy? It's so much. See, the key place is the relation between dualism and non-dualism. And the closest thing you can do is get to the point where you flicker in and out of those two places. Where through total love, it's just like the same image that I often use is, sometimes I've been making love to somebody and we are locked in bodily union. We are in the deepest possible body penetration and psychic space of intimacy. There's so much that it is beyond two-ness. There's only one of us at that moment. And then at certain points, we pull back and might look into each other's eyes in a dualistic act to say, we come down in order to experience the bliss that we are when we go beyond the experiencers. In other words, we come back into the experiences to enjoy the bliss, and then go back into the oneness where we are bliss. We are not any longer experiencing it. We just are in a state. And then we come back and say, yeah, wow, that too, and then go back. Right? And you go in and out of that place. And when you dig that place, and I watched my guru for a long time to figure out how his game works, And then I began to see his fingers always moving. He's always doing mantra to Ram, 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 Ram. And he's doing it in relation to his breath. And that with every breath, he goes in and out of dualism. That the place where you breathe in, and then there's that little place before you breathe out. And then as you breathe out, there's a little place before you breathe in. And we ignore those little places. And when you talk about your breath, you think of it almost as a spike curve. Just breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. But it's actually the place between the in-breath and the out-breath, and the place between the out-breath and the in-breath, that is samadhi. It's the place of unity. And the way he works is, with each breath change, he goes in and out of the place of 1 and 2, and it's all done in total love. And that's the place you stay finally, right at the edge, and you do everything you do all day, but you do it in that state of total, just on the edge of dualism. You come back in order to love it all. That's the way Bhakti-Yoga works.